Hello and welcome to episode 7 of your first book podcast. So, despite kind of the depressing nature of this title, I'm actually really excited to get into this one because I'm going to share how I almost quit writing my debut novel, which is actually quite insane because I'm aiming to get this book out in March, if not March, April, May at the latest. Spoiler alert, I did get past that extreme dip that I was feeling, and we're going to go into that. And so just so you know, the book that will be coming out, because I did not quit writing it, is called Connecting Flights. And pre-orders for both ebooks and print books, need to double check on the print books that I can figure out to do that okay, will be out very, very soon. So keep an eye out for those. And if you're interested in a book that is about a spoiled college grad that somehow finds herself getting sucked into a magical cult, this is the book for you. And that's all I'm going to share for now. The irony of almost quitting my debut novel is that the closer I got to finishing my most recent draft, the closer I felt like it would be a good idea to quit. And so if you're listening to this, if you're in like the first draft stages, second draft stages, or third draft stages, and it's just feeling like a slog and so hard to get to the finish line, I want you to keep listening to this podcast because I promise you can get there. And so what happened was I had already hired a developmental editor, and I initially gave myself an unrealistic deadline of finishing my most recent draft to send to her by December 15th, 2023. And even though I was still writing, making a solid effort to work on this manuscript every single day, I couldn't make this deadline, or it would have just been rushed. Like too much overwhelming feedback would have come at me if I submitted what I had. And so I extended it again to December 31st, 2023. Yep, New Year's Eve, right in the middle of the holidays, which was probably not the greatest idea in hindsight. And once I couldn't make that deadline, the date was extended once more to January 8th, 2024. And I was feeling pretty low at this point. Like I didn't like the fact that I had to keep saying like, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. But I did make that final submission. And honestly, like 3 weeks, it's not really going to make that much difference in the grand scheme of the book being out. But I was feeling low. And so the good news is that the manuscript is currently out of my hands, and it has been nice to let go of that pressure for a while, even though I'm anxiously waiting to get it back from her so I can work on the next draft. And between debating hiring a copy editor or doing the copy edit myself, as I am currently what I'm referring to my rush stage, for better or for worse. And what I mean by this is that I have now publicly announced that this book will be out March 2024. And my brain is starting to think, like, what if I don't have enough time? Like, what if I said March, but the book doesn't end up being out until April or May? And as much as I really don't want to push a deadline again, I want to make sure that this book is ready, not only for me to submit and have out in the world, but also that it's ready, it's readable, it's ready to be enjoyed once I hit that publish button, versus just winging it. Like I have put a lot of thought into Connecting Flights, and I want the work to reflect that, even though it's a piece of fiction. It's not a self-help book, and I know I've talked about this before, thinking that maybe nonfiction has more street cred, but I've just put so much thought into this, and I'm really excited for you to read it. So moving on, why did I want to quit writing my debut novel when I was just so close to finishing it? And I think the main reason is fear, which we can explore a little bit more. And again, if you're someone who is dreaming of writing a book and you're getting closer and closer to it actually happening, I think it's normal to feel a little unsettled because this is something that you've never done before. So anticipating the unexpected, right? And so, if I'm being honest, it's been a really big dream of mine for a long time to write and publish a book. I didn't know what book that was. I didn't know what plot. I didn't know what direction it would be in, other than it would be a fiction book. But until 2023, it was never really a dream that I took responsibility for or owned. It was honestly just a pipe dream, something to something to daydream about from time to time. And then I decided to just start telling friends and family that I'm writing a book. And I don't think I believed it myself. Maybe I thought they wouldn't believe me. But people started to ask, when is your book coming out? I hired an editor. People would ask me, are you finished your book yet? When can I read it? And this is still happening, which makes sense because I am talking about connecting flights a lot. And this, it started to make me feel nervous. And I talk a little bit more about this in the episode on being embarrassed to write a book. So give that one a listen to if you're kind of interested in that, or if writing a book is one of your goals. I think you will find that incredibly helpful. And so this surprised me because I finally got to a stage that I had wanted and craved for so long, that is like actually being in the thick of writing my first book, so that when I finally got there, it was, I don't want to say hard to accept, but it just felt a little uncomfy. Like I thought, like, who am I to call myself an author? I haven't even written the book yet. Like, can I really claim that title of author until the book is out? Like I felt like an imposter. As I saw myself extend my deadline multiple times in a row, which also caused me to reschedule other services that I had booked out in anticipation, like a proofreader. So I not only had to tell like one editor it's not ready, I had to tell the editor after that editor, like, hey, can we postpone this because I'm still working on the draft? And it didn't make me feel great about myself. And I saw myself repeating the same behavior when I hired a copy editor back in October of 2022. My cat wants inside. In that I was in October 2022, like I had no idea what I was doing. I have more of a grounded sense of my writing processes now and how I'm going to go about publishing the second book. But in October 2022, I literally had no idea. Like I was literally sending this copy editor one chapter at a time because I couldn't meet the deadline I had set for myself. And the company that I hired this copy editor through was like, we don't normally like accept one chapter at a time, even though I was like sending them rapidly, but it wasn't their processes, which makes sense because I know they want to focus on the whole project at once. And because I couldn't meet the deadline I had set for myself back in October of 2022, I really, really just wanted to throw in the towel and give up. And this feeling resurfaced back in December of 2023 because I thought, oh crap, I'm someone who just keeps extending the deadline of this darn thing, right? And the weird thing is, it's not like I wasn't doing anything. It's not like I stopped writing the book. Like, in fact, I was writing every day and I was working full-time hours those past few months. And I was probably writing more consistently and sticking more to a writing schedule than I ever had before. And I still had to extend the deadline. But what was different this time is that I prioritized finishing the draft. Even if I had to extend it again and again and again, I sat myself in front of my computer every evening at around 7 p.m., sometimes writing until 8, sometimes 9, sometimes until 11 p.m. before going to sleep. I would watch much less Netflix in place of writing. Even though I was literally doing all the things to get this draft done, I was just so hung up on the fact that I would have to extend my deadline again, and maybe I should just quit. Maybe I should save the money on editing, save the time, save the stress, or at the very least, put the book on hold again for a few months and just pause all these editing deadlines until the draft was ready. But the reason I picked these deadlines or booked these services in the first place is because I thought they would keep me accountable. And honestly, this one that was submitted January 8th, it really did. Like, I don't think if I had scheduled to work with that editor, I'm not sure that current draft would be finished right now. So my strategy works. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the writing, if it was easy, if it was hard, which we can get into now, because there were some nights where the writing, it felt easy. I felt in flow and I was having a good time writing this book. This didn't happen immediately. It's not like I sat down on my computer and was like, this is going to be so much fun. No, 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 no. This writing being in flow for me usually happened after 40 minutes of forcing myself to open the Google Doc, make a tea, revisit what I wrote the night before, and try to get my characters to come alive on the page. Like, it took time to even get into that. So like, I know if I schedule myself 2 hours of writing time, probably only 1 hour of that is going to be spent actual writing, because there's just so much mental focus that I have to get into. And there were some nights where I didn't even write any new scenes, but I spent my writing time figuring out the cause and effect of each scene and what would happen next in the story. But the main constant was that every night I dedicated time to the book, whether it was thinking time or writing time. So if you are someone who is working full time, you're busy, but you are still wanting to write a fiction book, choose writing time. And this is just a friendly reminder that thinking about the book, outlining, brainstorming, all that stuff still counts as writing time, because it is, in the long run, I believe, going to make you a more efficient writer if you know where your story is going when you get on the page. And this is coming from someone who thought I never had to outline, which no, outlining has saved me. It's just really interesting because if you're listening to this and you're wanting to write your first book, it means you've never written your debut novel before, right? And you can only write your first book once. And I've heard the sentiment before, and I've heard enjoy the process because this can only happen once. But a lot of times we only appreciate this in hindsight, like right now, maybe like those nights I didn't want to write. I would rather watch Bob's Burgers on Netflix. But now that I'm talking about it, I am romanticizing the process, right? And I think that's fine. And I think as writers, of course, we're going to do that. But there were definitely growing pains, because writing this first book is something new that I'm experiencing and choosing to challenge myself with. A lot of thoughts came up. And I'm honestly just really, really curious to see if similar thoughts will come up when I write my second book, my third book, and so on. And even just saying that, like, my heart raced a little bit. Like, as I said, like, when I write my second book and my third book, I was like, oh, Christina, is that you talking? Like, it just feels very unfamiliar. I feel out of place. I'm not, quote unquote, like in the writing industry, in the book industry, other than asserting myself online and saying I'm an author, but I don't have an English degree. I didn't take any formal training. I have just self-taught myself a lot of this stuff, and I'm picking and choosing from what editors to work with and that kind of thing. And that is so exciting, but I am not following like a structured path that someone set out for me. Like, I'm to a T, I'm following like write the book, get the book edited and all that stuff. And I have made mistakes along the way of in terms of what order to hire editors in. But it's my first time learning not just my writing process, but the publishing process. And so to wrap this podcast up, this episode, I'm going to share with you the main thoughts that came up while working my way to the final deadline, like literally my thought spirals that I wrote in my little diary while I didn't want to write. And then to end this episode on a more positive note, I will share the thought that really, really worked for me and helped me finish what felt like one of the most grueling deadlines I have ever set for myself. And I know when this draft comes back from my editor, I'll have another deadline and another draft. But again, I am just really excited for connecting flights. If you were to see like draft one versus this draft that's currently out, the story is so different, but I think it's going to be really fun, really entertaining. Like I said, if you want to read a book about a spoiled college new grad sucked into a magical cult, this is the book for you. So the main thoughts, or what I like to refer to as the mental challenge or Christina's thought spirals that came up while finishing this deadline, were mainly rooted in this deep fear or thought of, do I even really need to finish this thing? You know, like I'd be slogging through a scene and I'd think like, does this even matter? Like I'm tired. I could just quit now. Like no one's really waiting on this book, right? Like I could just quit now. All my deadline stress would be gone. I would have more free time. I could just write as a hobby. That sounds fun. I could just write the book and have it rot away in my Google Drive folder, but I could still say I wrote the book. I wrote the book. I wrote the book. Like it just, I wouldn't have to think about the fear of reactions of others when it comes out or the thought of my family and friends reading the book. Like I could just make this a hobby, and doesn't that sound nice? And doesn't that sound like less pressure? And another thought spiral that came up was that I just don't want to do this. I would rather watch Netflix. I would rather read. I would rather watch YouTube. Like, why does this feel so hard to write this thing? It's not like this is a physically taxing book. And at the end of the day, I'm choosing to write this book. No one's asking me to write this. This is not a job. This is not required. So since I chose to write this, I could also choose to stop writing this. But then I would have the thoughts of, no, but I really, really want to have a published novel out there. And I had to check myself a little bit on this because it was similar to thoughts of wanting the result but not putting the effort in. And for a more concrete example, wanting to play guitar just so maybe I'm at a house party and I can start playing a wagon wheel or something, right? For fun. But I actually don't want to put the effort in to learn how to play the guitar. I don't want to experience the frustration of that learning curve, right? The reality is, I am much more willing to experience the frustration and the learning curve of learning to write a novel than I am of learning how to play guitar. But there were so many moments where I just sat down, I turned all the lights off so I could only focus on my computer screen. I changed the contrast, I put some music on, and I would think like, I just don't want to write right now. I just don't want to write right now. But then I would get to that like 40-minute mark and I would get in the zone sometimes, not always, but I kept it consistent. So now that I've given you a little bit of insight into the thought spirals that came up with this grueling deadline, as promised, I want to leave you on this final thought that just hit me after trying to coach myself out of the thought spirals we just talked about. And what happened was I must have been playing like some cozy lo-fi or something. I think I was drinking some wine. I was in my comfy pajamas and I was getting really like into the scene. I was laughing and I realized like, wow, like it is honestly such a privilege that I get to sit at home all cozy in my pajamas with my blankets, work on my book. My cat was probably on my lap. Like it's so magical. And it just led to such a writing flow. And I realized that like I was immersed in this world in the book of the characters that I created. Like I created this world, I created these characters, my brain created how they interact with each other, and it just felt so fun. Like it just felt like I've been playing a lot of Nintendo Switch lately, so it just felt like a cozy game where I get to explore and see what happens next, and I can always change it. Like I'm writing it, so ultimately I have the power of what happens next, and that just made it a lot more fun. And so if you are someone that's currently struggling to get through your next draft, whether it's your first draft or your sixth draft, I really encourage you to just think like, how amazing is it that you wrote these characters, you wrote this world, you wrote how they interact with each other. You essentially have, you're playing God essentially with your own characters. It's like a choose your own adventure story, except you have final say as the author. Like that is just, when you think about humans and our ability to write fiction and our ability to read fiction and our ability to enjoy fiction, like it's quite astounding. Like I'm currently reading a book about magical dragons, which this does not exist in real life, unfortunately, but my brain is able to process this and read this as if it does. And so when you read Connecting Flights, like it is very much based in our real world. It's based in LA and Portland, but there are some magical things that come up, and it's going to be so fun to for you to immerse yourself in that world and to believe that it's something that's actually happening. Like the power of our brains to write fiction and enjoy fiction is truly just amazing. And at the end of the day, I know that I don't want to just pursue writing as a hobby. I know that I want to be an author. I don't want to be someone who has a book coming out soon, but that's soon turning into 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now. Like Connecting Flights, New Grad Magic, book one is coming out in 2024 this year. And I cannot wait for you to read it and for you to just experience the insane adventure that Mia, the main character, goes through. So I will leave you on that note, and thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening. I wish you tremendous luck on your writing goals. And if you have a vacation coming up soon, Connecting Flights is the book that you are going to want to read. Bye.